Great. Thank you so much again. I was actually really excited to this interview. I love talking to the innovators and creators, and we get so much inspiration from those. So I actually wanted to start by asking how you got involved, but you kind of answered a little bit. Do you want to add something more? So I understand that you went to Manila with your husband, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you have done before coming to Manila, and then how you kind of got involved in this as a warm-up question.
Yes, very good. Though my passport says I'm Dutch, I was raised in other countries like Belgium, France, and Switzerland. And then when I wanted to pursue a career in architecture, my parents said, you have to go to the Netherlands since you are from the Netherlands, so you have to experience that. So when I did, I also encountered my husband. He's from the Netherlands as well. So we both studied at the University of Technology in Delft. And then when I graduated, we moved to Hamburg, Germany, where I specialized myself in renovations. After 7 years, my husband works for Siemens Renewable Energy. He moved to Manila, and of course I decided to join. And then while I was here on my search on what my next step would be in terms of my architectural career, I also stumbled upon some of the courses that I've been taking in my studies back in the Netherlands, which was housing in post-disaster communities, and how to build back after, for example, after a typhoon, and the use of local materials. So when I actually dove back into my old scribbles from my studies, I noticed that this interest would actually be very practical here in the Philippines. So I started digging into the various local materials, bamboo, for instance. But then actually it was really immediately faced with the fast plastic pollution. So I wondered, could we not make use of this waste product and turn it into a construction material that can be used in architecture purposes. So that's where actually I started joining webinars on the topic of housing, and that's where I met Francois. And then he was right at the point where he was in need of an architect, because he just finished the first successful series of lumbers, but he wanted to not just sell the lumbers, but also show what can we do with lumber. So this is where I joined in, and then I started developing a shelter, and that's all the things that we achieved. So I'll keep that for later. Right. So yeah, that's how I got enrolled.
I see. Interesting. So you've been working and living in many different countries, and okay. So I want to talk about the issues, right? So although PLAF was already established before you joined, but you are in the Philippines and you see these plastic issues in the city and then outside. What is it like for you, these issues around plastic waste?
It's you really get to be faced with the issue, since growing up in countries where there's a proper waste management system, you should know, but since you're buying in the supermarket lots of single-use packaging, but you don't know what happens after you throw them away, because it's being transported and nobody sees it properly. Whereas here in the Philippines, one of the many issues is the improper waste management. That means that a lot of the plastic that lies around in the city end up in the rivers and quickly end up in our oceans. So that was actually also the initial starting point for Francois and the PAF team to say, we do want to tackle plastic waste. We want to turn waste into lumbers, but let's first face the first step. How do we get plastic? How do we make sure that we can pick it up from the rivers and from the streets, but how do we actually make sure that we make it more efficient and collect it directly from the users? So this is actually something that Francois started in 2018. He set up a waste management network where he started collecting from communities. It was pre-pandemic, so it was also from schools, universities, and we created collection points throughout metropolitan Manila. And we made sure that we collected all the plastic and we brought it to our warehouse where we started to sort and segregate them. Now, of course, for now, we cannot use all types of plastics, but we didn't want to make it more difficult for the users to donate their plastics, for example. So we said we accept all types of plastics, and then we are partnering with other companies that can actually recycle some of the other ones, like the PET bottles, so that we make sure that all plastics come to us, and those that we cannot recycle, we then give to our recycling partners.
I wanted to understand like how people see this plastic waste in Manila, for example. So if you go around, like if you get out of this skyscraper that you are in and walking on the street, do you see a lot of waste lying around in some areas, or how do you kind of feel that the magnitude of the challenge from your perspective?
I see it when I try to escape the busy city life during the week. I go to the beach in the weekend, and we love to go diving, snorkeling, and this is where you really see the magnitude of the problem, and also one of the reasons why it is so severe in the Philippines, because the Philippines was ranked third in 2010 amongst the biggest plastic waste polluters. But recently, in a study from this year, it actually says that 80% of all the marine plastic waste can be brought back to 1,600 rivers, of which more than 30% is situated in the Philippines. So it means that roughly 500 rivers are here in the Philippines are the biggest polluters. And the reason why is, of course, the Philippines is known for its beautiful islands. It has more than 7,500 islands, more than 36,000 kilometers of coastline, but which also means that it can collect all the plastics that are easily brought back to the coast through its rivers. And then, of course, you have other issues, for example, the often recurring typhoons, which causing floods and storms, which actually make sure that the frequency is much higher of plastic entering rivers and entering our oceans, rather than countries which have a very long river coming from inland. So it has a lot of travel time. And so when I went snorkeling in the reef, and especially when the current is wrong, you get faced with it, because all the plastics are being they're stuck in the reef, and it's a huge factor, because of of course, the Philippines is known for its tourism, and it's also one of the main economic drivers. So if we don't clean up our beaches, if we don't clean up our reefs, you can see that the tourists eventually might not even come anymore to the Philippines because of this issue.
Right, great. So moving to this solution side, and you mentioned, on the website, I saw that it started with plastic collection in 2018, and the eco lumbers came a few years later. Right. So do you know how, maybe this is a question for Francois, but do you know how this idea for the eco lumbers came about? I guess it sounds very complicated. I mean, for a person without engineering or chemistry degrees, it's kind of converting that into durable materials sounds very a daunting task. So how did that come about?
Francois already knew that actually the business model that we are using is already proven to be very successful in Europe and the US. There are a lot of companies already that produce eco-lumbers. So it's not particularly an invention that we made. It's just that we saw there wasn't any company doing this in the Philippines. So we saw the gap in the market, and we saw the Philippines being ranked amongst the top polluters. So it was okay, this is actually something that we can pursue. But of course, it's a technology that we had to come up with ourselves. So that's why it actually, in a one way, you could say it took long, because we were focused in the first 2.5 years merely on collecting plastics, then gaining some ground, gaining some connection and knowledge, and then we were able to set up an R&D team, and then we also partnered with local universities. So we had many technology interns with material engineering backgrounds that helped us and experiment with those with various formulations. So then one way it's taking long, but in the other way, within 2.5 years we were able to have a good working formulation to be able to extrude those eco-lumbers. Yes, that's actually how it came about.
I see. So now that you have eco-lumbers, and then you I understand you joined in the process of improving that, and what was your first task that you need to tackle in PLAF?
My first task was not a small one. It was Anne Sophie build me a house.
Okay.
Together with Alliance to End Plastic Waste, there was already a dream from Francois to build a transitional shelter. And actually there were already some floor plans and a model that was given by a French architect based on a project that was done after the earthquake in Haiti. Though it was my task to adapt it to the Philippines. I wanted to mix it with traditional Philippine architecture, adjust it to the climate, but also to be able to withhold the typhoons, strong winds, earthquake resistant, but really, most importantly, to adapt it to the user. So what is a Philippine household? How many members are in the family? How do they use their house? How many windows, or how can we make use of the natural ventilation? So that was my task. So how can we then make this shelter with the use of our two products? We had the eco plank and an eco post. And actually that was the main challenge, because the plank was 2 meters long and the post is 3 meters long. So we had to build a shelter of 20 square meters only with these two materials. And usually in the architectural design process, it's the other way around. First you start with the design, and then you think of the final product. Do you want to use concrete, or would you like to use wood or steel? And this way now I had two products in hand, and I said you have to build it with these two products.
Right. So what did you end up doing? So you had to add the different types of materials to build this 20 square meter house?
Yes. So we decided to make the structure and the flooring, even the facades, so the walls, with our material, but adding some lighter weight, locally available material. I'm not sure if I say it right, the nipa leaves, which are the banana leaves, that's the roofing. We made them from these leaves, and we also used woven bamboo for the covers for the windows, so it's easier to open up the windows, and it's not as heavy as our material. So those are the two additional materials that we incorporated. And we had, because of the restriction of the 2 meters, we did have to use wood for the structure of the roof. So because we needed length of 5 to 6 meters.
Right. Great. It's interesting that kind of mixing local materials and then the design, introducing the design that the people in the communities feel comfortable. So what is the use for this? So you talked about shelter, but what are some of the typical uses of this building?
So initially, or let's say our ideal end result would be a transitional shelter. So we'd sell it as a kit. For example, say in the north of Luzon, there would be a typhoon, and many of the houses were destroyed. So in the first phase, you would need emergency housing, which are usually in the forms of tents and partitions, so very lightweight. So that's not where we come in handy with our products. But then sometimes it takes much longer for a community to build back and to move back into their own homes. And the emergency housing, then it's not just for 1 or 2 weeks, but it extends into months or sometimes even years. And that's where we wanted to introduce our transitional shelter. So it's a kit that can be sent with one transport, and it's a whole setup, and it can be locally done. You don't need to send any skilled workers because it actually functions the way as wooden lumber. So you can saw them, nail them, you can put screws in them. But the whole idea is that the design is also with that kit. So we give all the steps, saying first you need a grid, you need a foundation, then you have these posts, you place them here. So it's a one kit that can be built up. But the good thing is also that it can be disassembled again and be used by someone else, because that's the beauty of plastic. It's very durable and very long lasting. Though we have started using it as single use, but actually it could be ideal for construction material and to disassemble it and assemble it somewhere else again.
Oh, sounds great. So the intended use is for those kind of unfortunate events, and then I hope that these events will not happen that frequently. But have there been actually deployed into this kind of a post-disaster situation?
Not yet, no. So we have built our first prototype, and it's located at our factory on display. But since it's a prototype, it means that there will probably be another prototype. We're now using it. We're having lunch. We're sleeping in it. We're really trying to test how actually does it feel to live in a plastic house. How is the level of comfort? How hot does the surface become? Those items we take back, and then we're going to improve them and build our second prototype next year. And another one is that with the current 2 products that we have, the overall weight also means that for now it's slightly more expensive side. But it can be solved. But we're going to expand our product so that we can use for the walls, for example. We don't need to have those load-bearing planks. We can use much lighter weight products. So that's been our focus for since August, and we're happy to say that by January we will expand our product line we will start introducing eco boards, which can replace those planks, which make it much more lightweight and therefore also more affordable.
And so, how is it to sleep or to spend time in the house made with eco lumber at this point? I just can't imagine. Does it affect really like the moisture or temperature, or how is it?
Actually, for now, the tests have shown that it's quite comfortable indoors. And so it doesn't affect the moisture, and therefore it's also very suitable for other outdoor objects like boardwalks, pontoons, fencing, because it's termite resistance. So there also we've seen very high increase of inquiries of resorts asking if they can replace their wooden boardwalks with our product, because they have issues with termite, with erosion, weathering. So this is actually this is not an issue, though we do say that it's better to have a bit of a shaded area in case if it's full in the sun, just as you would walk barefoot on the sandy beaches. It's really hot. That of course is also one of the issues that our lumbers also have.
Great. Okay, thank you. Switching the gear a little bit to implication for the wider business sectors, and so my understanding of your business is that it's really has a lot of different pieces, right? So you need to collect plastic, you need to process plastic, you need to have a design of the good houses, you need to be able to deploy those, and maybe perhaps you need to kind of train the people who will be building the houses in the disaster-stricken area. It sounds very daunting to say the least. Is this something that this kind of combination of all these different pieces, is this something that you see elsewhere? Meaning other people actually doing, you did talk about eco lumbers is not new in terms of the technology, but having this kind of different bits and pieces, putting them together, I guess makes PLAF very unique. So from your perspective, did you see something similar done by businesses?
It's a good question. No, I actually haven't. But I think in a way you could say that it is our strength, but at the same time, this is also our weakness. Because we also get mistaken a lot that we are a non-profit, that we are an NGO, whereas we are a social enterprise. We have some of our other side goals, apart from plastic waste, is raising awareness, because we want to really spread the word. So we're giving a lot of webinars as well, and we speak at events. So that's why we get also often mistaken maybe for being an NGO. And therefore, since we have so many different niches, so we are collection waste. We have a collection program. We extrude lumbers, but we also make products. So people sometimes think, where maybe it's too much choice. That's what we found as well. So we've tried to limit it, but we do see that that by customizing it to the needs of our clients, it does help us make us bigger. But it's to compare it with other companies, I might need to think about it. I haven't encountered any yet.
Right. I'm guessing that this plastic waste management is becoming a big issue, and with initiatives like APW, it's becoming more and more mainstream, and I'm guessing business sectors may be approaching you, and then they might have some ideas, and you give advice, etc. What are the typical kind of questions that these companies, if any, they approach you and ask, and what kind of advice are you providing them?
Sorry, could you repeat? I hope the background is still okay because of the...
Yes, I can see some construction going on. So the question is that because this issue of plastic waste management is becoming very well acknowledged, and I think partially thanks to the APW work. And so I'm guessing that the companies are approaching PLAS with different ideas, different questions, and to the extent possible, what kind of questions are you businesses asking you, and what are the kind of advice that you are giving them?
So we see a lot of interest above all, first of all, the FMCGs, so the companies that do a lot of packaging in their products, and what they are interested, or they ask if they can be part of the process. So we have what's called the PLAF loop. So it's collect, we sort and segregate, we shred, we do the whole mixing, and we do the extrusion, and now we even make our lumbers into finished products, like for instance furniture. So the first question they ask, can I be part of the loop, or I want to be involved in the complete loop, and both of them are possible. So we do say, okay, we can collect and recycle on your behalf, but we also advise them at the same time that this is a transition, and it's not the end solution. Sometimes even during webinars, I say that our mission is to not exist, because we don't want plastic waste. We don't want to provide companies a solution so that they continue to produce virgin plastic. So we want them eventually to find a sustainable alternative for their product. But we also don't want to cut off any partnerships, because we do feel that it's great that they show an interest in companies like us, that they really want to be involved in the entire loop. So actually those are actually our major partners also so far, are companies that have these packaging material. If there are other companies that they don't necessarily have their own, they don't produce any plastic waste, but still want to become part, we also offer them not only to join in the PLAF loop, but also to sponsor machinery, maybe an R&D team, the salaries of our workers, because we also we work with a lot of workers from low-income families with waste pickers. We give them trainings. So if a company prefers to sponsor salaries of those workers, that's also a possibility. And and lastly, we also have a really big community. So ever since the start, since we started collecting plastic waste from individuals, companies, we've also kept in social media, which has now really grown, and that's also one of our key strengths, that we have our whole entire community that are really willing to offset their plastic, even though it's very small, because an individual would maybe produce 10 kilos or maybe 30 kilos waste a month, but we still accept that. So it's not that we do want to grow, but we accept the fact that we have the little things as well as the bigger contributions.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially the solutions can be small, but if it's really tangible, I think it's really a great step forward. So my last question, which is a little bit related to the previous one, and this may not be that easy, but this webinar series is targeting the Japanese audience, and there are a lot of companies and academics and also entrepreneurs interested in the waste management issues in Japan. What kind of advice or message can you give to this audience in Japan?
I think my advice would be to first look at the end product. What would you like to recycle waste into? So my advice for business sectors would be first, is there any product that is really hard to find in Japan, something that needs to be imported? Could we then make it with plastic waste so that we become less dependent on other countries, but we can source it locally? Or even the other way around, is there something where Japan is famous for, like the biggest export product, which can be made not with virgin plastic, but with recycled plastic to give it that added value? For example, automobile parts, accessories. And then if you have that product, then the loop will come into place, so that the plastic waste collection, set up, and then recycling that into that specific product. I think that would be helpful. In our case, it is a construction material that got my personal attention. So in this case, it was not a product per se, but it was an issue in the Philippines, where there's a huge housing backlog. So by 2022, they estimate that it will be 22 million houses that are still in need. And that's where I think that our product of eco-lumbers can be very suitable for that market.
Okay, great. Are you enjoying your work?
Yes, very much.
That's great. So that's all the questions from my side, but do you have anything that you wanted to say but I haven't really prompted you to say?
Maybe, well, one of the things that we're also focusing on, because we learned from the fact that though the shelter was very successful, learning by doing, and we also learned that the material is very suitable for outdoor furniture. So for fencing, decking. So that's actually now also a sidetrack where we're heading into. But yeah, maybe that's it. No, that's all for me.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Anne Sophie. It was really fun for me, and then very inspiring, and really appreciate your time. And then also initially, thank you for kind of testing different locations within your house, and then your house tour.